Hey, what's up everybody, Trofinet here and welcome back to GwentEdge. In this show we talk about specific Gwent cards or interesting decks to play around with. I'm gonna start this episode with a very cool announcement. Starting this week I have been approved as an official Gwent partner, so from now on I'm being supported by CD Projekt themselves and I have a bit of a direct line to them as well if needed. So moving on to the video. The most recent update to Gwent refreshed the Nilfgaard faction in the game, and since we haven't talked about them in a while, I felt like it was as good a reason as any to make another Nilfgaardian deck. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I'm a sucker for thematic decks, and today's deck is no different. Today we'll talk about my Mage's Assimilate deck, under the leadership of Henrietta, the new faction leader for Nilfgaard added in the Crimson Curse expansion. The Crimson Curse expansion has mostly been about the characters and events of the Blood and Wine expansion to The Witcher 3, which largely takes place in Toussaint, a small duchy under the rule of Nilfgaard. I won't spoil any of the amazing storytelling of that expansion, just play it for yourself, it's really good. But the ruler of Toussaint is Duchess Henrietta, and she is also our deck leader for today. Henrietta has a really cool leading ability. She allows you to add up to 3 random cards in your opponent's hand, choose one of those and play a copy of it. On its own, this ability is already really powerful. It allows you to play a card and also look at least a part of your opponent's hand, which is not to be underestimated. Especially if you use her at the end of a round when your opponent only has 3 probably quite powerful cards left. Knowing what your opponent has left for those last turns is invaluable to play around their final options and ruins any surprises your opponent might have in store for the end. Henrietta is not to be underestimated. To complement her ability, Crimson Curse adds yet another modifier to the game we haven't talked about yet: Assimilate. Units with Assimilate are boosted by 1 each time you play a card that was not in your starting deck. This includes cards you steal from your opponent and, more importantly, every copy you create, including the ones you create with Henrietta's ability. Assimilate is an ingenious way of allowing certain cards to grow continuously while still being unique compared to other factions. It also fits perfectly within Nilfgaard, with their schemes and treaties constantly convincing other factions to yield or to join their side. However, this deck is called Mage's Assimilate, so aside from using the new Assimilate abilities, we also focus on units within the Mage category to allow for a variety of strategies. We'll go through a few of these units before we go into the broader strokes of the deck and how to use it. First off, I can't talk about mages within Toussaint and not talk about Fringilla Vigo first. Geralt's former lover and failed spy has received a bit of a makeover, making her a bit more useful than before. Originally, Fringilla could copy a special card from your opponent's deck and play it on order. This had some issues. With her 4 powers, she could be countered while waiting that 1 turn to activate her ability, and if your opponent didn't have any special cards at all, you were out of luck. The recent patch, however, changes this. Fringilla can now deal 2 damage to an enemy unit when played. For each mage unit adjacent to her, however, the amount of targets increases to a possible of 3 targets, with 2 adjacent mages. Perfect for this deck and to thin the herd a little. The second sorceress in this deck is Yennefer Conjurer. I can't seem to make a deck without a Yennefer card in it, so there we have it. Yennefer Conjurer can damage all the highest enemy units by 1 each turn on order. Her potential is enormous, capable of clearing carefully managed enemy boards completely. I've also added Letho Kingslayer, who can copy her abilities for double the destruction, making you nigh unstoppable. Letho can of course also be used to copy any of your opponent's engine cards. Our third and final main sorceress is Isbel of Hagge. I talked about her before, but she is still an amazing card. Isbel allows you, on order, to pull the top card of both decks and choose which one you keep and which you give to your opponent. If your opponent is passed, however, you can use Isbel to give yourself a card advantage, especially in the final round, since your opponent can't use that card they receive anymore after they have passed. That extra card can be the difference between victory or defeat, which it is more often than not. On the sorcerer side of things, we have newcomer Artorius Vigo, Fringilla's uncle and a master of illusions. Artorius has Assimilate and can play a 1-power copy of one of the bronze units in your starting deck. This immediately triggers his Assimilate ability once, bringing him to 4 power as a start, but also potentially bringing either another Assimilate unit on the field or a spy, such as the Duchess Informant. The Informant can copy a bronze enemy unit and play it on your side of the field, triggering any Assimilate abilities again. The Doppler is also a good unit to use with Artorius because of its 1 power, which then gets boosted, but I didn't include one in this deck because I wanted to focus more on the Assimilate and Mage units. Aside from Artorius, we also have Dorregaray of Vole, who can lock a unit. Just that. They don't all need to have fancy abilities. He's still a mage, so Fringilla can work off him greatly as well. Albrich is our 3rd male mage and allows you to select any card in your deck, put it on top, and boost it by 2 if it is a unit. A great card to use if you're at the end of a round or need to play 1 card in a past round too, setting you up for a great final hand. The best thing about Nilfgaard is still the amount of options you have. You can lock, damage and purify while also setting up some nice engines, especially with Assimilate now. I'm not going to go over every single card I've added in the deck, you can see the deck setup right here if you want to try it out. But I've also added Letho, Auckes and Serrit again, who are all great counters with high damage and locking abilities playing off of each other. The greatest surprise for me personally in this deck, and the final card I'll talk about specifically, is Vivienne Oriole. If you don't know who Vivienne is as a character, again, definitely play Blood and Wine, it's an amazing side quest within that expansion. Or you can check out both episodes about her in my Witcher 3 playthrough. I've played through both options in that side quest, so you can check that out right over there to see what Vivienne is all about. But back to Gwent. Vivienne Oriole has a peculiar ability. She starts at 1 power, but can destroy an enemy artifact. She then boosts herself by the provision cost of the destroyed artifact. Which sounds risky at first, but a lot of decks these days run at least 1 powerful artifact. I was surprised at how often I could take out a Svalbard Totem, a Portal or a Waters of Brokilon card, boosting her by up to 13 for the Portal card, aside from destroying it as well. This also works on most traps aside from the Pitfall trap, which will trigger first, killing Vivienne, but otherwise it works immensely. It might seem risky, but even the lower power artifacts or traps have a provision cost of at least 6, boosting Vivienne to 7, along with destroying the artifact, which makes her very valuable in the case where you're facing an artifact. She is, however, useless when no artifacts are played, I realize that, and if that happens, this deck also contains a Vicovaro Novice, which you can use to swap her out of your hand if needed, but again, you'll be surprised by how useful she can be. The Novice is also a mage, so again, that works with our team. Now, onto actual gameplay. How do you use this deck effectively? As usual, there are 2 ways a match can go. Either you're playing for points, trying to build up your side of the board, or you're playing offense, countering your opponent's moves. Opening a round can be done with some of the basic bronze cards. Ducal Guards can set up Assimilate, Nauzicaa Sergeant gets boosted on every deploy unit you play, and the Magne Division, well, just boost themselves by just standing there alone on their own. Artorius is also a great starter, giving you 2 units in one go. Just be careful to have at least 1 bronze enemy on the field, so you can use your informants as well. If your opponent does not react, and what they play is not an immediate threat, start to double down on the Assimilate units. Either adding more or playing copies of your opponent's units using the informants, Isbel or your leader ability, although I would keep that last one until the very end. If your opponent plays dangerous engine cards, don't hesitate to take them out immediately with the Viper School Witches, Fringilla or any of our other lock options. Your biggest engine is Yennefer, so if you find an opening against a lot of low power enemies, she's a sure bet as well, especially if you control the numbers on the board with extra damage, keeping all the enemies around the same power. Don't forget to use Letho Kingslayer to copy Yennefer or any other handy engine cards you can find on your opponent's side. Remember that Nilfgaard gives you a lot of options, so use them. If you get locked yourself, we also have the Diviners to purify the locks. Diviners also have the Assimilate ability, and Purify can also remove both bleeding and vitality, so don't forget that, and even the Doom status if you need to. Towards the end of a match you can end in a few ways. The Master of Disguise can swap its power with an enemy's, allowing you to swap the power balance in the last few turns. Both him and Isbel are great second to last cards to play, if you will be the one to play the final card as well. If your last card is a Diviner, you can even counter a last minute lock from your opponent, so you can use your final abilities regardless. If you're facing one high power unit, you can either reset it using Saar Gwynleve, which is also in this deck, or lock and destroy it with Vanhemar, another male sorcerer, for one big final blow. And of course, as I mentioned before, using Anna Henrietta's leading ability when your opponent only has 3 cards left provides you with the knowledge to circumvent their final moves on top of playing one of their final cards back at them. Don't discount the Duchess on appearances alone, because she's a crafty woman. And that's it, I hope you enjoyed the episode. This deck is a blast to play, in my humble opinion. Got any other tips on how to play the new cards added to the Nilfgaard faction? Or do you have any ideas to just adjust this deck? Don't hesitate to leave advice in the comment section down below so we can help each other out. As I said in the beginning of this video, since this week I'm also an official Gwent partner, so I'm super stoked to move forward and make more videos about this amazing game. Check me out on Twitter if you want to talk, and if you enjoyed this video, why not give it a like? Any support is really appreciated. Thanks enormously for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next episode of GwentEdge. Goodbye.